Ever wonder why your tank isn't thriving? Unhappy corals, nuisance, algae growth, cloudy water, maybe sick fish? There is one thing you can do to address all of these issues. A water change. Why it's a secret weapon, how to do it correctly, how to choose the right salt, and what problems it solves, coming up now.
Matthew from HelloReef here. This is a much more of an intermediate level video. So if you're a true beginner, consider sitting this one out and starting with something a little more simple like the videos from HelloReef Connect. That's it. Back to the video.
Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a single medicine that could cure every disease, or even a single medicine that could cure several? Well, in the world of saltwater aquariums, that thing definitely exists, and it's called a water change. A water change isn't a panacea for every single ill that befalls your aquarium, but it can solve a surprising amount of problems. Let me share with you one fact that if you've never heard before is about to knock your snorkel gear off. And I'm not making this up. In fact, I'm using the calculator from Hamza's Reef. If you have a 100-gallon aquarium and you perform a weekly 10% water change, no element can ever rise more than 9 times the weekly amount added. For example, if you were to add 10 parts per million nitrate to your tank each week, after 50 weeks of 10% water changes, your tank would still have less than 90 parts per million nitrate. Without a 10% weekly water change after 50 weeks, your tank would have 500 parts per million nitrate. Let's say you up your weekly water change to 20%. Now your nitrate levels will be 40 parts per million after 50 weeks and never go higher than that. Let's put this into perspective for you using the 15-gallon HelloReef tank. With a 1.5 gallon, 10% weekly water change, here are the numbers. If you add 3 parts per million nitrate each week, after 50 weeks, your tank will have under 27 part per million nitrate. And if you add 0.05 parts per million phosphate each week, you only have 0.4 part per million phosphate after 50 weeks. And if you're willing to do a 3-gallon, 20% weekly water change, you can cut those numbers in half. So why are water changes a secret weapon? Because they add an absolute upper limit to any element you add to the tank. Correctly performing a water change means causing as little stress to your animals as possible. Primarily, this means making sure your fresh seawater is mixed thoroughly and that it matches the salinity of your aquarium. Then you need to heat or cool that water so that it matches the temperature of the aquarium water. Finally, you need to remove tank water and add back in freshly made seawater in such a way as to minimally disrupt your pet's habitat. This would mean to avoid hugely disturbing the sand bed and maybe performing the actual water change in a sump or rear filtration chamber to minimize stress. Choosing the right salt mix means knowing 2 things. Important water parameters like calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium, and knowing your seawater mixing and storing habits. Some salts can be mixed and used immediately. Some salts can be mixed and must be used within a few hours, while other salts need to mix for 24 hours, and still other salts can be stored for weeks at a time. So you're going to want to start by choosing a salt that matches your mixing and storing habits, and you just have to read the label on the seawater mix to determine this. Knowing your calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium levels and how much they deplete each week is the second step to choosing the right salt mix. Some salts mix to 7.5 DKH, while others mix to 12 DKH. If you're shooting for a range of 7 to 9 DKH, then choose a salt that will adequately replenish those numbers during your weekly water change. Or if you have enough coral and other inverts in your tank to necessitate you starting a 2-part dosing regimen, then consider choosing a salt with lower calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium levels. I'm not saying a water change is going to solve every problem in your tank, but I do think consistent weekly water changes will get you 80% of the way there. Here are some of the things I could think of that water changes will help solve. High phosphates, high nitrates, nuisance algae, low calcium, low alkalinity, and low magnesium, sad looking corals, low trace elements, accidents, ammonia spikes, and old tank syndrome. There's an unfortunate misconception in this hobby that water changes are really only there to alleviate problems once they've already happened. But for me, that's like saying diet and exercise are only needed once you have your first minor heart attack. That just doesn't make sense to me. Think of your weekly water change like diet and exercise. You'll keep your tank healthy and prevent a whole bunch of problems from ever even happening. YouTube told me you're gonna like this video, so check it out. And until next time, be well and happy reefing, everybody.